The Considered Life by Stefan Boublil. Chapter 13. Music. It stands to common, however not altogether substantiated sense, that children, from their first breath to their first word, are the purest form of humanoid consciousness available for us corrupted grown-ups to study. It is hence attractive to experiment early with such innocent and naive grasp of context to see if any insight can be gleaned from their reactions to Salsify-Gratin, the collective works of Sol LeWitt, and being dangled from German balconies, for it may still be possible for them to see, hear, taste, and feel in unvarnished ways what we, having welcomed complexity, can no longer appreciate. Music, chief among affordable and universal stimuli, could figure prominently in such evaluation. That is why, from the moment they were born, and much against the will and patience of their easily satisfied ears, I have tried to challenge my own children's oral appreciation of the world with equal parts Monk, Bartók, and D'Angelo, not just to teach them the varied values of a note, but also to gauge their response to various ways of dispensing harmony. Would they classify music as we do, in subjective good, bad, and danceable categories? Or might they recognize it as what it is, a language to be learned, exercised, and wielded? Certainly, within the confines of its motifs, choruses, intervals, and other codas, there seem to hide in music parts unknown, parts we do not understand, keys perhaps crucial to the comprehension of our lives. What is the relationship between a piece of music and the emotions we ascribe to it? It is tempting enough to make an intellectual connection between your breakup and the song that came on the radio right after the door slammed, the ballad you and your father danced to right after you said "I do." My grandfather's instrumental version of La Vie en Rose, barely heard through the exhaust port of the adjacent Moroccan restaurant, and your savage and unprovoked garbage bin mauling of an innocent homeless man. But sometimes there is no contextualizing. It really is just the melody, the harmony, the intonation, those 3 or 4 minutes if you're talking Carrie, or 639 years if you're talking Cage. Where does that reaction come from? Music is an important part of the considered life because it is an important part of life, period. And not in a small everyday way, be it Spotify, the department store jingle, or the concert hall where Keith Jarrett is probably moaning right now, but rather in a big, pervasive way. Quote, "There are the random blips and howls picked up by radio telescopes," unquote, that author Jamie James reminds us of, harking back to the time when art and science were both deemed necessary to explain the cosmos, helping us remember the music that was, in fact, and until the demanding empiricism of an increasingly practical industrial revolution, part of, quote, "a stately and ordered mechanism whose smooth operation created a celestial harmony, the music of the spheres," unquote. More of a harmonic concept than an audible sound, pre-romantics of the middle and late 18th century indeed put forth the idea that celestial bodies of all orders, be they planets, stars, or quasars, actually make music as they revolve and travel through the universe. And these bodies, by their definition, gave such signals scientific worth. That is the scale of importance I am talking about. And if outer space is making music on a vibratory level that we humans are not able to hear in our puny 12 to 20,000 hertz range, perhaps it has an influence on our lives and behavior beyond our understanding, the same way a dog whistle can throw a neighborhood into chaos without us silly bipeds noticing anything out of the ordinary. Unfortunately, we tend not to be terribly interested in processes beyond our senses and would much rather cast our fates to the supernatural wind when demonstrable explanations lack. As a regrettable result, we know little of why we senselessly weep during the inspired lacrimosa, why we absurdly flail to the electronic beats of Whip It, or why we are driven to thoughts heretofore absent when the love supreme begins. If, as science tells us, we indeed see, hear, and slurp, but through specifically visible radio frequencies, is it so dubious to conceive of stations besides those already discovered, broadcasting transforming yet overlooked signals? As it is during most beginnings, many questions still lack definitive answers in human existence. Voids begging to be filled by religion, powdered donuts, or the making of love. Personally, I like to fill the void with music. My home is essentially a jukebox from which only physical departure can provide escape. I am still unsure why, but every day is permeated with the melodies of Barber, Hancock, Questlove, Evans, Williams, Correa, Endigo Cello, Cohen, Wonder, Nougaro, Jarrett, Tip, Nelson, Richter, Washington, Schofield, Sakamoto, and Glasper among too many to list. I sometimes feel as if my survival depends on systematic and preponderant influence from their worlds, heard and imagined. For without music, I feel small. I feel alone. I feel abandoned. Through my own inadequate assembly of notes, to the rich language mastered by those whose lectures hold power over me as no other can, I feel permitted to grow, empowered to walk my mind onto undiscovered paths, entitled to invent new ones. In fact, there is not one sentence in this volume written without the guidance of music. The power of music's many dialects surely seems greater than we give it credit for it is able to swoon millions of people at once, people who do not even speak the language, something near impossible to accomplish with spoken tongues, with the noted exceptions of political despots and Anthony Robbins. In fact, it is assumed to be so powerful that music is one of the conduits through which the human race has been hoping to reach out to civilizations beyond our own. Carl Sagan met the woman he ultimately married, Anne Druyan, when she was the creative director on the Voyager interstellar mission, for which they debated to determine, over the course of many months, what cultural milestones to send out into space in order for eventual creatures, surely long-necked and oblong-eyed, to get to know us. They settled, among other things, on the greeting hello in 59 languages, whale songs, and the musical stylings of Mozart, Beethoven, and Bach. A fine selection, to be sure, but all music being fundamentally equal, this decision is taking for granted, as we tend to about many a subject, that the past always delivers greater value. We collectively assume that everything we produced yesterday is better than we produce today or will tomorrow. We call this habit nostalgia. Certainly it stands to reason that technology will allow us to do more later, but as history is prologue, probably not better. Obviously, in music, the approved cliché bears out. Mozart will always seem to trump the Beatles on the widest possible scale of human accomplishments. But why? Well, there is a sense that complexity somehow equals quality. As much the reason why freshmen are so into seniors as why yesterday will always be more revered than yesterday. Let us not forget that Mozart's music, for lack of a better word, was popular in its time. In Maynard Salomon's complete and excellent biography, I was flabbergasted to find out how many of his extraordinary catalog of approximately 1,000 pieces were actually explicitly composed to appeal to the expected audience. Not quite the image we have of a romantic demiurge who sits alone, receiving harmonies from God. It turns out that one of his many gifts was precise mimicry of the time's chart toppers, which he wrote and promoted in order to drive demand and up his earnings. He then, against all tradition of 18th century decorum, which expected you to wait for the crowns of Europe to call on you, became his own impresario in order to secure his schedule, the attention of the aforementioned bejeweled, and again make more money. Today, the boy genius would be called a sellout. Yet, somehow, his music transcends its intention and time, suggesting an unidentified component we have not yet deconstructed well enough to understand, which some, surmising beatific involvement, call inspiration. On the other, more practical hand, his music could be explained not simply as a means of communication, which may or may not involve divine spark, but a translation of inner states, a transcription of what he alone could see, hear, feel, and put into melodic language. That which I was hoping my young children could clue me into, but no such luck. That is perhaps why Mozart has a special place in the pantheon of composers, not because he can apparently talk to fetuses in the womb, but by virtue of his using a couple of dozen musicians to speak a language that is incontrovertibly unique. The way he arranged music, the way he used the sections of his orchestra, the way he employed a single oboe, languishing upon a sea of violins underneath, is unsettling in the best way imaginable. Unthinkable coming from a creature with the same organic makeup as mine. Well, maybe not unthinkable. Yes, when I listen to the Requiem, I cannot help but feel that there is something foreign at play, something unknown to me by virtue of my rather meager experience, something to which I cannot relate by empirical exploration alone, something that fills my eyes with the tears manly men have warned me against, emotion so powerful that it seems unlikely they merely express the inner states of what I consider a limited, intrinsically mediocre life form. But I still refuse to allow my self-inflicted ignorance to be resolved by ideology, and would much rather attribute it to the expertise of the musician. Inspiration, which I cannot wait to more thoroughly devalue later, is such an ideology, which presumes the existence of an other, of either known or unknown quantity, in order to outsource the reasons for one's deserved prowess. I say poppycock. In art, when love, doubt, or any other demon is summoned, tremendous license is used in seeking an artful equivalent within the boundaries of the craft practiced, which should in fact aggrandize the seeker, not downgrade him or her to mere vessel. Each poet is different and able to express different levels of sensitivity through their different languages. From Modigliani to Malevich, from Mahler to Sakamoto, to Balanchine to Béjart, from Kurosawa to Lasseter, from Gropius to Koolhaas, from Rodin to Christo, from Shakespeare to Sioran, from Lartigue to Demand, from Muir to Seacrest, from Wells to Sterne, and from Hergé to Miller. All manners of creators use their particular vision of the world to craft the stories they want to tell, using their expertise as the expressive field they have chosen to plow. The possibilities presumed of these variables might appear impossibly numerous and unknowable for us not privy to the connections made within the synapses of those brains, which would naturally suggest otherworldliness to us outsiders. But the very uncertain nature of these individual processes is exactly why I still favor human ability as opposed to external influence for an explanation of such overwhelming brilliance. Anne Druyan made it her mission to loudly communicate that people could indeed feel awe and wonder about the cosmos without necessarily introducing the concept of God into the equation. So it is with music, because finally, it is the musician's capacity to process the information, the feeling, the thing they saw, felt, heard and translated to the best of their ability that creates such passion from the audience. Probably thinking that you are irresistibly clever, you will snarkily tell me that Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was able to translate on quite another level than Usher then. That is indisputable. Yet, whether Usher is actually aware of this or not, both actually work to translate the unknown. Furthermore, the unknowable. Unknowable only because I have been told our brains are working quite below capacity. Music aims to burst through such limits, an ambition humans are obsessed with. And listening as we sometimes do to a song on repeat is, I believe, symptomatic of that quest. We think, I love this song. But we are actually being curious about something we cannot yet put into words, which this song somehow addresses in a satisfying way, one we simply must ponder again and again. It is funny to me how we have enjoyed the ability to create and be engrossed by music at different levels of access and emotion, transcending ages, political systems, and tastes, yet still tend to think of it purely as entertainment, as a form of pleasure. We tend to think of music as fun, profitable, or both. But why do we never stop to think of music as a language? Literature has been a matter long considered both educational and entertaining. So why not music as well, in all its forms? Why only perhaps segments of the musical realm that seem of greater value because they are older or seem more complex? That is a mistake. If you are fortunate enough to be able to create, speak, or even merely casually understand the language of music, Truly, it is an opportunity to delve within yourself and fashion another tool for self-knowledge. Music, at any level, to my mind, is active, not something to idly sit by, enjoy, and leave when over. Whether songs are shuffled through an iPod or enjoyed during a night at the opera, I'm always amazed at how passive people are in front of such sublime expression of human intelligence. Whether it is sitting perfectly quiet, eyes toward the stage, listening while working on a proposal at the office, or plugged in while changing trains on the subway, we seem almost always uninvolved in the emotional journey that music invites us to take, dancing being the notable exception. Isn't it incredible that for thousands of years, a few notes and rhythms have pushed us out of our chairs to participate in what can only objectively be described as standing convulsions? When we dance, we are literally being moved by music. Is it overreaching to advance that music might have the power to move more than the shell? And I don't simply mean to provoke emotion. We know it does that. I mean to be able to transform the inner parts of our minds and bodies in the same way that it distorts the outer parts. In some measure, to the people lucky enough to understand music beyond enjoyment, that is clearly true. The ability to create melodies with your own fingers when you sit down at a piano, when you hold a guitar, or even simply sing in the shower, is a joy rarely encountered in other parts of life. But why is a feverish beatbox and not a melodic whistle finding its way out of your brain at this very moment? Whatever the location, the notes that escape must indeed have causes beyond mere coincidence. I think our brain is attempting to tell us that we can communicate in another way, that we are, in fact, bilingual, even if we have been all youth long betrayed by an educational system favoring the language of its country to connect with the world, a lost opportunity for a lobe that could use the encouragement. Perhaps that is because music seems rather useless when taken at face value, save for the very large business that has reduced its worth to the sale of a 99-cent ringtone. Nevertheless, the reason you chose a musical ringtone instead of a vintage telephone bell indicates another opportunity to wonder what, in that snippet, appealed to you so much that it is summoned every time a booty calls. Which, I guess, is a lot. Everything you do, say, wear, or pursue in any way, shape, or song says something about you, from your ringtones to your socks. It uncovers that from which you could easily profit if you cared to look and consider. Everything you do has its foundation in everything you are, and it is amazing how little we seem to pay attention to what we project. Of course, we are concerned about how we dress, about what we say and who we fuck, yet rarely ever do we try to find out why. In contrast, we assign much importance to what other people project and why, noticing the subtlest details about them, taking them and their decisions to wear that or say this very seriously, and quickly mustering an opinion about their identity and personality through those subtleties, the same choices we make for ourselves within a second's thought, because we believe them to be natural, built in. We rarely question why we like a song. We dig it, and that is reason enough. A missed opportunity. Let us not forget that what is harmonious to me is not necessarily to you, and that speed metal, like Bach, inasmuch as it fills some with horror, fills others with bliss. Taste, as it eventually must, comes into play, and so does education and context. There are so many niches, so many subdivisions of music, so many categories in the record store that we're selecting more precisely the types of sounds, the types of chords, the types of melodies, the types of production values that we want to hear as a reflection of our lives, which have themselves become subdivided, no longer singular in goal or meaning. We have finally allowed ourselves to be in the marketplace as complex and demanding as we are in our lives. We can now like black and white, be artists and administrators, leaders and followers at once. There is a great unknown in each of us, which we are, now more than ever, able to grasp through the mass marketing of tentative solutions to just about every need in the human experience. Find something a human wants, and you will find a product catering to it. Find something a human likes to do, and you will find a local association catering to it. We have been ratcheting up the commercialization of goods and services since the Industrial Revolution, and of course, music and art as a whole are no strangers to the principle, since they have become commodities themselves. We have stumbled upon a concept well documented in Chris Anderson's The Long Tail, which reveals how more profitable it is to sell analogous products to a few people than to try and please everybody. The reason is that we know those people already enjoying Brazilian electro-folk will buy every single album thrown at them that iterate within the genre. Isn't that just how we behave? Go straight to our section in the record store, sample a couple of tracks, and ka-ching? We know already that this music philosophically fits us. We have identified with the category and, being creatures of habit, become the pawns of record labels who will pitch their entire catalog a certain way to gain from this effect, pulling the wool over our naive eyes, promoting the all-too-common, if you like that, you'll love this. Not necessarily sinister conduct on their part, rather one that takes advantage of understood human behavior. That is why cloud-based music services that get to know us and our musical tastes based on past likes and dislikes will one day rule the landscape. Especially those that take into consideration not only comparative purchasing, but instrumentation and harmonies within algorithms that analyze differences in ethnic styles, melodies, subgenres, and just about every other component of production, hence making recommendations based on music, a considered engine that can, if you will. This means something. This is important. I borrow the words of Roy Neary, again, because we must exploit such paths to musical discovery for all they are worth. Digging through the seemingly never-ending layers of musical history, as if looking for the secret will of a rich and long-lost great-uncle to see if our names might have figured in it, is an opportunity we cannot afford to miss. Chances are that you may find a nugget of self-knowledge precipitated by a fugue from an obscure Hungarian composer, or by that song you first danced with a girl to, which you just found at the bottom of that drawer labeled mixtapes. These may recall places, events, and people, or have the ability that no piece of music before had in making you feel a certain way. For this reason, do not underestimate the tools of inquisitive musical expansion, or of any artful expansion for that matter. There is little difference, of course, between an extraordinary musician and a tremendous poet or painter, both of them able to manipulate language as an instrument of self-understanding, however unconscious it may be, sometimes merely flowing out without much awareness. I often wonder about the differences between their intention and the reception their product is given, a significant reason why art is so hotly debated at large. What indeed are the intentions of the musician? And how much do they matter, if at all, to the listener? You often hear musicians talk in interviews about what they wanted to achieve. To an even greater extent in popular music, such meaning is explored in music videos, behind and in front of the music documentaries. Listening to the records, we are overwhelmed with the artist's often overbearing liner notes, so much so that it becomes impossible for us to differentiate their intentions from our still forming opinion of the recording. We now know what the band looks like. We have heard them talk. We have deconstructed their haircuts and outfits, and we think we know who they are. Hence, we are probably correct in most of our assumptions about where the music came from. We know all of this, and too routinely let it distract us instead of appreciating the music on a, musical level. In a time without music videos, media images, or explanations, there's just you, in an uncomfortable, if velvety chair at the concert hall, not quite aware of the part each musician plays in making you feel enraptured. You could cry if you did that sort of thing. You would even smile if it weren't so frowned upon in the spectatorship of such serious art. Yet, such fervor is still in our grasp. Just close your eyes and pay attention. You may not know much about the composer. You may know nothing about the piece of music or where its place lies in the historical context. You may know little about anything that is happening in this grand auditorium between your ears. But you have been given an opportunity to listen, and that is something we must do more of in order to lure understanding. As I took breaks between revisions of this book, I indulged in marathon music listening sessions in order to clear my brain, playing all the musicians I love, from George Duke to Herbie Hancock to D'Angelo and Robert Glasper. Inspired, I always ended up at the piano myself, where some of those beautiful love stories between jazz and R&B had stuck. Steeped in these melodies, as well as the themes you're now accustomed to, let me humbly offer this introduction to my EP titled The Pressure, which you can complete in the iTunes Store as a companion piece to this book. Enjoy.
Told tale that shows you glory you can sell. Where do you get music? Your family? Your friends? Or do you get it from music videos that chime without end? Music, it can help you express your feelings or relieve you of pain. It can even stop you from going insane. In the morning I wake up to music and go to sleep with it. I wonder what would happen if it was done away with. I listen to songs on planes and long car rides and would be bored without them because they are a part of me. From morning till noon, the music goes on, and I hear a wonderful sound and do all but break down. Music is an odd thing. It can decide whether you laugh or cry. It can make you nod your head and tap your feet. It changes the mood of everyone you meet. Is music a sound, or is it some long-lost dialect of people long ago that spoke in beautiful tones with voices of silk? They spoke in music. Let's be frank here. Maybe music is just that, language.